listened. A rise in temperature, ocean patterns changed, and ice caps melted. They called it extreme weather. They didn't know what extreme was.
Je pense que le changement climatique, personne ne peut s'en réjouir, nulle part.
Est-ce que vous pensez que l'arrêt de l'AMOC pourrait déclencher d'autres points de bascule ?
Non, ça on sait pas du tout. Ça on sait pas, et c'est pas parce que j'y ai pas réfléchi, mais c'est parce que la méthode scientifique, c'est de remettre en question ce qu'on croit savoir, pour essayer d'aller plus loin et pour étoffer nos connaissances. Et donc, ce point de bascule de l'AMOC, c'est à la fois quelque chose auquel on s'attend parce que les modèles, parce que la théorie, mais c'est tellement pas quelque chose qu'on a déjà observé que ça reste à l'état d'une hypothèse que d'un point de vue scientifique, on est impatient de confirmer, d'un point de vue citoyen un peu moins, parce qu'on sait que les conséquences seront désastreuses, mais j'ai rarement lu d'études qui racontent qu'est-ce qui va se passer après le point de bascule de l'AMOC, et donc notamment, est-ce que ça entraînerait un autre point de bascule.
Donc, ce que vous dites, c'est très grave, ce que vous décrivez, tous les effets, mais vous paraissez pas particulièrement inquiet, parce que j'imagine que vous baignez dedans depuis 20 ans. Néanmoins, en tant que citoyen, quand on regarde la vidéo, etc., on se pose quand même la question. Enfin, c'est bizarre, parce que c'est grave ce qu'elle dit, mais par contre, elle n'a pas l'air inquiète. Est-ce que vous pensez que on doit s'inquiéter ? Est-ce que vous pensez que le scientifique, il doit aussi transporter des émotions comme les courants transportent la chaleur, ou alors est-ce qu'il doit rester factuel ?
Alors, c'est une question qui est très pertinente et à laquelle je veux répondre. Je suis très inquiète pour le futur. J'ai des enfants et j'aime bien le dire parce que je suis très inquiète pour mes filles, à savoir dans quel monde elles vont vivre, mais même avant elles, c'est moi, dans quel monde je vais vieillir. Et qu'est-ce que je vais voir autour de moi ? Et d'un point de vue scientifique, j'ai aucun problème à utiliser les termes de catastrophe, parce que je pense que même le terme de catastrophe, il est encore sous-estimé par rapport à ce qui va se produire, encore plus si l'AMOC s'arrête. Pourquoi j'arrive à le dire comme ça avec le sourire ? C'est d'une part parce que j'ai beaucoup travaillé moi-même par rapport à ces angoisses, et donc je ressens de l'éco-anxiété, mais je n'en souffre plus tellement je suis imprégnée par ça au quotidien. En fait, si grosso modo, si j'avais pas fait ce travail, je serais pas là du tout, en fait. Je serais plus là. Je réussis à être là parce que j'ai trouvé ma manière d'affronter cette anxiété et de la transformer en action. Et une première action, c'est de venir raconter ça ici. Alors, les autres actions pour que je garde le sourire, que j'ai envie de me lever le matin, c'est qu'en fait, moi-même, personnellement, j'ai finalement atteint une cohérence entre mon mode de vie, mon mode de travail et ce que je vois au travers de mon travail et au travers de la science. À savoir, transformer mon quotidien, transformer aussi mes sources de réjouissance et de plaisir pour qu'elles soient plus en contradiction par rapport à ce que je sais qui est en train de se produire, mais au contraire, que ce soit, même si c'est infinitésimal, même si c'est secondaire par rapport, même si ça n'a aucun rôle, au moins je fais ma part du colibri qui fait que moi-même, je me sens à l'aise à raconter en effet toutes ces horreurs. Ces horreurs aussi, c'est un vrai débat. Est-ce qu'on le dit comme ça ou pas ? C'est-à-dire que j'ai des collègues qui préfèrent avoir un langage beaucoup plus édulcoré. Au contraire, on me dit souvent que moi j'ai un langage très franc et que je dis les choses de façon un peu crue. C'est vrai, c'est un trait de ma personnalité et je crois qu'il faut tous reconnaître qu'on a chacun notre façon de communiquer, qui est liée à notre personnalité. Et c'est vrai que j'ai tendance à parfois m'agacer quand les gens me disent « Mais non, mais ça va pas être si pire, rendez-vous compte, vous pouvez pas dire les choses comme ça ». Si, moi, d'un point de vue citoyen, je pense qu'on n'est pas encore passé suffisamment vite à l'action de transformer nos sociétés parce que justement, les gens ne prennent pas la mesure de ce qui est réellement en train de se passer. Alors, oui, il y a des risques en termes de société, que certains paniquent et ne sachent pas gérer cette peur. En effet, c'est vrai. Et je prends un risque en parlant de cette manière-là, de paniquer certaines personnes.
Every so often, a paper comes along, a peer-reviewed scientific paper that jolts the subject matter. It jolts the senses because things happen that are very, very unexpected. So I'm talking specifically about what's happening in Antarctica, specifically in the oceans around Antarctica, because we've seen some massive shifts going on there. So the sea ice around Antarctica was increasing about 1.5% per decade. This happened for many, many decades. But in 2015, 2016, everything changed. The Antarctic sea ice started a very, very rapid decline. There are lots of theories. Is more heat coming into that region? Is it to do with the melt of the glaciers on Antarctica? You know, what is going on? And now a new paper has come along, and it argues that it's the surface salinity. Instead of a freshening of the ocean around Antarctica, we've actually seen, and you know, you'd expect a freshening from melt of ice and calving of glaciers and the melt of that ice in that region. You know, the ice on land, of course, is very low salt content. If it's old, it's completely fresh. But instead of that, what we're seeing is actually an increase in the sea surface salinity in that region, and that says a lot about the ocean circulation, the overall ocean circulation. So we've often talked about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, weakening, and we were concerned about a shutdown which would completely change the climate in the northern hemisphere and on the planet. And associated with that meridional overturning circulation in the northern hemisphere, the AMOC, is something called the SMOC, the Southern Meridional Overturning Circulation. And not only has the SMOC slowed down, but it looks like it's actually reversed direction. So instead of water, you know, ice being formed, fresh water being taken up into that ice and causing very salty water, which would then sink to the ocean floor, completing the loop of this thermohaline circulation, what we're actually seeing is, instead of that water descending down to the abyss, we're seeing more and more of that warm, salty water breaking through the stratification barrier, the cold, fresh water on top, mixing and bringing a lot of salt to the surface waters. And that salt in the surface waters is greatly inhibiting or blocking ice formation, sea ice formation around Antarctica. So what we're seeing is, it looks like we may have had a regime change or an abrupt change or a tipping point, call it what you want, in the way that ice is formed around Antarctica as a direct result of that change in the meridional overturning circulation. So this is a very, very key finding.
Je suis un peu pessimiste sur les raisons pour lesquelles on en parle autant, parce que j'ai peur que ce ne soit pas uniquement pour comprendre, mais parce qu'il y a certains courants qui instrumentalisent les dernières études scientifiques pour rassurer les gens sur le fait que le changement climatique, finalement, c'est pas si grave. Et la variabilité naturelle du climat va compenser les effets induits par les émissions d'origine anthropique, donc nous, et que du coup, finalement, tout va bien se passer. Ça fait tellement de temps que j'explique ce que c'est la MOC, que je raconte sa complexité, que je parle du changement climatique, et pour autant, on continue de me solliciter pour me dire oui, mais quand même, si la MOC s'arrête, ça va résoudre le problème, etc. Alors que c'est vraiment une connerie. C'est pas vrai.
And that's where we have our problem.
What's the timeline here?
As the EM field becomes more and more unstable, we'll start seeing isolated incidents. One plane will fall from the sky, and then two, and then in a few months, everything electronic will be fried.
Static discharges in the atmosphere will create superstorms with hundreds of lightning strikes per square mile.
After that, it gets bad.
Three months, gentlemen, and we're back in the Stone Age. A full year, the field collapses, and that.
Feel free to throw up. I know I did.
La journée d'aujourd'hui pourrait être la plus courte de l'histoire.
Millième de seconde, c'est 100 fois plus court qu'un battement de cils. Donc, personne ne va s'en rendre compte.
Because I asked him, does that rotation, that clockwise rotation in the sunspots where they rotate over 90 degrees within 9 hours, this is where you got to follow along with the math. If you can't keep up, I'm sorry. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not wrong about this. I'm going to explain it to a degree that people who can comprehend it are able to. I'm not going to try to pander to the lowest common denominator of understanding and get everyone to understand it. And if you don't follow along and you can't comprehend, it's okay. It doesn't change what's going to happen based on whether or not you know what's really happening or if you're like everyone else. But in my question, I specifically said, you made a video showing over 90 degrees of rotation in the sunspots within 9 hours. Does that indicate geophysical pole shift? And his answer was like, at first he started ducking and dodging. He's like, well, you know, you can use a welding hood as a solar filter and you can look at the sun safely through a welding hood. That's what he always does. He doesn't just give you the answer. He goes, squirrel! To take all the soft-minded people and misdirect them a little bit. People with the attention span of a goldfish forget what the question was by the time he gives you the answer, when he meanders around a little bit here and there and then goes, well, yeah, I mean. And here's the math. When the Earth is on a 23, God, I'm getting it off now. 23.5 degree tilt. That's what the standard axis of the Earth has always been said to be. Half of 45. So it's not 45, it's 23. That would create a maximum appearance of a 45 degree shift in those sunspots over the course of 12 hours. And I demonstrate that in the videos linked in the description titled Earth's axis has tilted over 60 degrees, creating a 120 degree perception of rotation over 12 hours. And I show you using this lid and a pill bottle, that when it's on one side, the pill bottle's sitting flat on the table on one side, and the equatorial plane is cocked at 45 degrees. It looks like you gotta shift this pill bottle 45 degrees to the left to get it to be even with the plane, but it's straight. And then when you see it on the other side, it looks like you gotta shift it 45 degrees to the right, even though the pill bottle stays straight the whole time, and I just move it around the lid. It's a perspective thing. I can't really show you right here because I'd have to change the angles and it just wouldn't work. But we establish a baseline right there. 45 degree tilt creates 45 degrees from the very edge of the horizon where you can first start to see it up to zenith, the peak. This is the sun at noon or the moon at midnight. When it first comes over the horizon to the point where it reaches the zenith, there's a 45 degree perception of rotation. And then there's another 45 degree perception of rotation from zenith to the other horizon. And when I first conceived of this, imagine yourself on a merry-go-round sitting in the middle, and you're in the middle laying down on it flat looking out, and there's still 10 feet of the edge of the merry-go-round in front of you. And there's a telephone pole. And this merry-go-round is cocked at 45 degrees. So it goes like this. And when you're coming around this way, where you can first see, at the 90 degree angle, that telephone pole, it looks like it's 45 degrees off of the horizon. Once you get right here, it's directly in line, perpendicular to the horizon line, the equatorial plane, your line of sight when you're looking off of the Earth. And then once you get back down to the other side, it looks like it's 45 degrees the opposite direction. So, 45 degrees tilt on the axis of the Earth creates a total of 90 degrees of perception of rotation over a 12-hour period. From one edge to the center is a the appearance of 45 degrees of rotation, and from the center to the other edge is the other 45 degrees, creating the perception of 90 degrees of rotation as it goes over. This is why the moon, as people remember it, half moon was right or left half, and sometimes it was off by 45 degrees, maximum 45 degrees. These days, you see a bottom half moon or a top half. So when Mr. MB3 says those sunspots, they should rotate a little bit clockwise around the sun, but if they go more than that, then yeah, that would indicate geophysical pole shift. Let me give you the numbers that I just calculated showing the axis is at 80 degrees, because those sunspots go from below the 9 o'clock position. You can eyeball it and see 9 o'clock is flat in the center. The line of sunspots line up over here, below the 9 o'clock position at 7 a.m. And by 4 p.m., they're clear over here at the 1 o'clock position. Over 120 degrees of rotation within those 9 hours from 7 a.m. below the 9 o'clock position. By the time it's over here at 4 in the afternoon, it's at the 1 o'clock position. Each one of those numbers on the clock, 9, 10, 11, 12, represents 30 degrees of rotation. 3, 6, 9, 12, 120 degrees of rotation within 9 hours means you're getting 13.33333 degrees per hour. That's 9 hours, 10, 11, 12. You still have 3 more hours before you can measure it from one horizon clear to the other to be able to figure out what the angle of the axis of the Earth is by dividing that number by 2. 3 more hours at 13.33333 degrees per hour equals 13, 26, 39.999999. Let's just call it another 40 degrees of rotation on top of the first 9 hours where it shows 120 degrees of rotation. The next 3 hours, it would show another 40 degrees or 39.999. That 40 degrees plus the original 120 equals 160 degrees of perceptual rotation for the full 12-hour swing. Divide that in half, and you've got the angle of the axis of the Earth, 80. So it's way beyond what he's telling you is the normal amount of clockwise rotation you should see based on the 23-degree axis of the Earth. You should be able to see 46 degrees worth of rotation over 12 hours. That means within that 9 hour, you would only have like 35 degrees worth of rotation. We see 120 degrees worth of rotation in that 9 hours, which means if you extended that to the full 12 hours, you would have 160 degrees worth of perceptual rotation. Divide that in 2, and the axis of the Earth is at 80 degrees. He knows it's a geophysical pole shift. I've been seeing this for 5 years. Observable data, because I was a truck driver and drove at night and noticed the moon. Bottom half, what's that about? And I would drive at night all the time. I just preferred to drive at night for scheduling reasons, plus there's less traffic, etc. And I would watch the moon as it goes, and I'd see, oh, okay, vertical light line, it's left half as the sun's setting, and I'm starting my drive shift out. You drive for 11 hours. You've got a 14-hour window to drive for that 11 hours. So I would watch the moon all night. And by the time I see it on the other horizon, when I'm getting towards the end of my drive shift, it's a bottom half. And I clearly remember it started as a left half. As it goes over, it rotates 90 degrees or so. The sun and those sunspots gave us an ability to actually measure and get a precise and accurate measurement of how much it's rotating within what window of time. And he showed you from below the 9 o'clock position clear over to the 1 o'clock position. That's 120 degrees in 9 hours. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 9 hours. 120 degrees. Extend that to the full 12 hours, it's 160 degrees. The axis of the Earth is at 80. Angry Catfish has been talking about this for a few years, how the moon is cartwheeling through the sky and the Earth is on its side. 90 degrees is here. 80 is like here. It is much closer to being on its side than vertical on its axis, where it normally is at 23 degrees. And someone in the comment section said, well, if it shifted that far, surely there would be all this volcanic activity and earthquake and seismic activity and tidal waves. Fuck what you think. Believe what you see. This is something you can see with your own eyes if you choose to. But instead you disregard the data that's there and available for you in favor of some self-soothing concept that you think, well, if this was true, then all this other stuff would be happening, so that must not really be happening. They're just projecting it. It's Project Bluebeam, right? The fuck out of here.